have a quorum.
So now Darren said he won't make it. He's stuck on a project out on 62. And I've got to keep an eye on the YouTube broadcast. It's got about a 20-second delay, but if I ever notice that there's an issue with it or it's stopped, we have to stop the meeting immediately. So just a heads up on that. So far we haven't had any. Yeah. Okay. And so, okay, we are
You haven't heard anything
running on YouTube. So whenever it gets to be time, we are ready to go. We'll move you all over there. Okay, and bear with, I've got a little trick. Whenever we get to the plats, I'm actually going to pull the plat up and it will move all of us over onto the side, and the main display will be the plat we are discussing. So it's 1:30. I haven't heard anything from Carol, so whether she's coming or not. So I guess, Wayne, if you want to go ahead and start the meeting, that's your call.
Yeah, might as well. All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order, the McCracken County Planning Commission. Let's all stand and say the pledge to the flag, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, under old business, if no one has any corrections of the minutes, they'll stand as delivered to us. The conditional and preliminary approval updates.
It hasn't changed. We're still waiting on the financing paperwork for Tiana Estates roads. So yeah, that's the only thing we got left hanging out there.
Moving on to new business. Or are we supposed to do the ordinances now?
We need to go ahead and remove from the table the ordinances, because I have had fiscal court members ask that we render a vote one way or the other so that they can take the issue up.
All right. Do I have a motion to remove from the table the proposed ordinance amendments?
So moved. This is Brent.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Cannon, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Hausman,
Aye.
Commissioner Metzger,
Aye.
Chair Elliott.
Aye. All right. Do I have a motion?
Now, I will add, we can't hear anything new, anything other than what we heard last month, since we're not having a public hearing on this right now. So, I mean, if there's anything you all want to discuss, as long as we don't bring up new information, you can have a discussion. Or if you want to just go ahead and make a motion, you can do that. If you want to make a motion, we had 3 proposals. So if you want to make one general motion, or if you want to break it up, a motion for each of them, that is your call.
Are we going to allow Sonny to say anything then or not?
Well, I mean, he covered a lot of topics at the public hearing back in February. So
can he refresh us on that?
Yeah, he can refresh you on that.
Sonny, would you please refresh us?
Sure. Really, my comments only go to the amendments to section 74. I don't have any comments really 51 or 65. Although I will tell you that my original thought when I started looking at this, you know, after you all wanted me to take some time to look it over, my initial thought was that the development plans and site plans should all be combined into one section, and you call that section 51. But even if you decided not to combine those, then you would still have two sections, one dealing with zoning amendments and the other dealing with development plans. Just seems to me that those two are, they're different principles and really should be covered in different sections of the ordinance. But nevertheless, I proposed those to the county, and Greg talked it over with some other people. They didn't want to do that, and so they wanted to stand on what had been submitted previously. So that's what I emailed you about with my comments about the current proposed changes to section 74. And do you all want me to go through that point by point? I certainly can, if you want me to.
If you don't mind, Sonny, if you would, that would be helpful. And then just kind of remind us of your thoughts from the last meeting.
Yeah, I'll just hit the highlights because there's a lot of technical stuff in here that's, you know, really kind of typographical or grammatical things that I commented on. But, you know, beginning, well, really with the very first paragraph, you know, the numbering and the structure of the ordinance itself is just off. We start off, you know, with the very first paragraph being a lowercase a, which is unusual, but I mean, that doesn't go to the merits of what's contained in the ordinance. But, you know, when you read that first paragraph under intent, it really puts more onto the Planning Commission's plate to consider with a zoning amendment than what the statute requires. The statute has a few things. You're supposed to consider the comprehensive plan and the other items that are outlined in the statute itself deal with zone changes. And this really makes it mandatory that you consider all of these other things. Now, not to say that these are not factors that, you know, would be beneficial to you, but it makes it mandatory, which makes me wonder if, you know, whenever I prepare findings of fact and conclusions of law, if I need to go through each one of those criteria and list those out, you know, as to what the evidence was on each of those points, which is also going to lengthen our hearings, probably because we're going to have to touch upon each of those points as we go through the hearing on each amendment. And I don't really think that that's necessary under the statute. Down at the bottom of the page, where it says initiation and action required for amendment. Primary change there is because you've got different standards for a map amendment and a text amendment. If you amend the map, it can be proposed by the Planning Commission, the fiscal court, or by a member of the public or owner of the property, not just any member of the public. But if you've got a text, a change in the text, like what you're considering now, it has to be limited to the fiscal court or Planning Commission as the only two entities that can request those changes. If you go to the second page of the proposed ordinance, let's see what my comment is there. Oh, that imposes a requirement that notice be sent to anyone owning property within 200 feet of the subject property, which is not required under KRS 100. Yes, send notice to owners of adjoining property, but it does not have the 200 feet criteria that this proposed ordinance has.
Well, no, in KRS, it states that you must send it to the adjoining property owners or any requirements set forth by the jurisdiction.
Or what?
Or any other requirement set forth by the jurisdiction. You just can't.
I don't think that's in the statute. I don't think that's in the statute.
I believe I don't have my KRS 100 with me today. I'm up in Steve's office.
Yeah, I don't know if I've got that section with me or not.
Yeah.
No, I don't see it, but I don't believe that's required. I mean, I think that, you know, you send it to adjoining property owners for, I mean, owners of adjoining property are going to be within 200 feet, obviously, of the property, but then you've got to get your tape measure out and determine who else needs to be given notice if you have that 200-foot requirement. Then if you go to findings required for granting an amendment, that section is really not consistent with what the statute calls for. It says that you're supposed to consider or record in your findings that the existing zoning classification is inappropriate and the proposed zoning classification is appropriate, and we don't have that in this proposed ordinance. That's KRS 100-213. Next point that I would highlight is the third page of the proposed ordinance. It says that substantial construction is supposed to commence within, I think our current ordinance has 1 year. This proposes 2 years, but I think the statute actually says 1 year, that substantial construction. Wait, am I looking at the right one? Yeah, KRS 100.203 says that the Planning Commission may require that substantial construction be initiated within a certain period of time, not less than 1 year. And 1 year is what it is in the current ordinance that we have in effect. Go on over to the fifth page of the proposed change under formal application. It says that to formally request the commission to consider action on any zone map amendment and or preliminary development plan, the applicant shall file a complete application. And then the last sentence though says that also the date for the public hearing will be set. Well, you know, preliminary development plans under our current ordinance generally do not require a public hearing, but this talks about requiring a public hearing for all preliminary development plans. The refiling section right below that, that I really couldn't understand what was intended by the language used. So I looked at the statute and pulled the language out of the statute that says that a denied map amendment or the consideration of a map amendment identical to a denied amendment shall not be considered for a period of 2 years. And that's basically a paraphrase of KRS 100.213. So there are a number of things that I think, you know, this ordinance can be, or this draft could be modified to be consistent with 100, but I don't think it's there right now, and I think it needs to be changed. And you know, that's the reason that I just don't feel like we're gaining any ground by adopting an ordinance that is incompatible with what the requirements of KRS Chapter 100 are as it applies to zoning amendments. Well, and also if you look down, this is on the 6th page, amendments to development plans. It says that amendments to approved development plans can be made only by official planning commission action following a public hearing. Well, you know, that requires a public hearing on a development plan or an amendment to a development plan that may not have a hearing to begin with, because not all preliminary development plans require a hearing. So, you know, it's those kind of internal inconsistencies and just the overall lack of being consistent throughout with the requirements of Chapter 100. And that's the reason I just don't think that we're ready to adopt this and recommend that the fiscal court adopt this proposed amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll answer any questions you have.
Yeah, if no one has any questions or other comments, do we have a motion?
Now, look, you know, we've got 3 sections here, section 51, section 65, and section 74. And you know, last time you all indicated that you didn't have an issue with section 51 or section 65. So if I don't know if you want to just make a blanket motion or if you do want to do it by section.
Yeah, so, I don't have any comments really on 51 and 65. I mean, any reason to adopt those.
Mr. Chairman, if you will, Greg, go back and give me just a little bit of history. What's the driving force or push to accept this amendment on 74? It just doesn't seem, I find myself aligning with Sonny and feel like we're trying to push something that maybe is not ready yet.
Well, actually 74, what is before you is what was originally proposed. That's also, or was originally the ordinance. It's at some point, okay, let me just be frank. People didn't know how to handle section 74 and they started tinkering with it. And then Doug and I came in and we started realizing there was some unworkable things. So we made some changes. It's gotten far from what its original intent and the way it's supposed to be applied. What's proposed before you is very similar to the language used in the city's ordinance. And I'm willing to bet most jurisdictions across the state, it's going to be very similar to them. Most of them are.
Even with the inconsistencies to KRS 100, how can the city and other commissions adopt it if it's in direct conflict with the KRS?
Well, see, we haven't seen the inconsistencies. We think it is consistent.
Well, and the other thing too, I'll just tell you that section 74 dealing with amendments and development plans is much longer than what I see in a lot of other zoning ordinance. Well, I can't say a lot. When I started my investigation into this, I looked at some other ordinances. I looked at Calvert Cities, I looked at Henderson counties, and some others that are available online. And I mean, some of them say that amendments will be handled in the manner established under KRS Chapter 100, period. Others recite the statutory language on making zone changes, and that's it. You know, they're maybe a half page in length dealing with amendments. We're dealing with, you know, an ordinance or a section of an ordinance, you know, that's now 6 or 7 pages long, which is far longer than most of the others. And I looked at the cities, and this is almost identical to the cities. And I think probably when the county adopted zoning, it probably was identical to the cities. And I don't know, what I don't know though is where all this stuff, if you look, you know, at the last couple of pages, it's got a lot of generic references to the county, but it doesn't identify, you know, a county officer or a position that is supposed to be the one that's reported to. And, you know, that needs to be cleaned up. And, you know, if it's supposed to be Greg, you know, as a planning director or administrator, then I think we just, you know, need to say that it's going to be the zoning administrator or the planning administrators, you know, something like that, instead of just referring generically to the county.
real quick, little side note here. I would like to note that Carol has joined during our discussion here.
Hi, Carol.
Yes, come on.
So we basically, though, if we looked at this and separated them all three out, we could go ahead and approve 5165 and then deny 74, and they clean up the language in it and make it more consistent. I mean, how would that sound?
I mean, from my perspective, I think that's probably the thing to do right now. You know, that's what I would suggest. I mean, the fiscal court can look at this proposed change in 74 and they could adopt it regardless of what you all decide to do. What you're doing right now is making a recommendation or withholding a recommendation on these amendments. It's up to the fiscal court as to whether or not to adopt the amendments that have been proposed. And I don't know whether, if you all decide not to recommend the changes in 74 to the fiscal court, I don't know whether, you know, it would be presented to the fiscal court in its current form for adoption, or what the plan is after.
Well, it would go to Sam Clymer as the county attorney. Sam would have to prepare it. And at that point, it would go before the fiscal court with the planning commission's recommendation to not approve if that's what you opted for. So, but it would still.
Somebody's going to have to take it to, I mean, somebody's going to have to be the driving force to get it to Sam. He's just not going to unilaterally pick it up and run with it.
Right. Yeah, no, that would be me and the deputy judge that would take that to Sam. So.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, sir. I'll make a motion to approve the sections 51 and 65 of the McCracken County zoning ordinances and recommend the McCracken County Fiscal Court adopt these changes.
We have a second.
Second.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Hausman,
Aye.
Commissioner Metzger,
Aye.
Commissioner Young. Carol, I didn't hear if you say anything.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Hausman.
I'd like to make another motion if I could. I move to deny the proposed changes to section 74 of the McCracken County zoning ordinance and not recommend the McCracken County Fiscal Court adopt these changes as proposed.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Second.
Call roll, please.
Okay, Commissioner Hausman,
Aye.
Commissioner Metzger,
Aye.
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Chair Elliott.
Aye. All right, I guess moving on to new business. Do I have a motion?
I move to receive and file the applications for the proposed subdivision of property filed by Rhonda Eads, New Life Baptist Church, Delbert Powers, Jana Medling, Jackson Purchase Energy Corporation, and Joanne Estates.
Do we have a second? I didn't hear. Did somebody second it? All right.
Yeah.
Carol did.
All right, call roll, please.
And Commissioner Hausman,
Aye.
Commissioner Metzger,
Aye.
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Chair Elliott.
Aye. I guess we'll have the presentations of plat by Mr. Cannon.
Yeah, that will be me.
Or your staff report or whatever, I guess.
So, okay. Okay, hoping that's now shared. So this first one here is Rhonda Eads. This is part of the Keith Eads estate, is what they told me. And what they are doing, they are abolishing some interior lot lines. This has come before the Planning Commission previously. And when it was previously brought in, there's an encroachment by the metal building on the north end of the property. The Planning Commission has previously acknowledged that. That is between the property owners. We are not dealing with that encroachment at all. All we are doing today is establishing some utility easements and abolishing the interior lot lines. Does anybody have any questions regarding that plat?
Greg, I don't have any questions regarding this particular, just one comment. I like getting these in electronic format. It's much easier for me to look at them on a computer screen than it is to look at them on paper.
Well,
your commissioners feel about it, but
we're probably going to, once we get back to normal meetings, in-person meetings, we're probably going to keep this where they're going to submit paper copies and electronic copies, and we're going to start trying to display them on the TV monitors there in our meeting room. That way anybody in attendance will be able to see. Whether you all keep receiving a paper copy or an electronic copy, that will be up to you. You all can email me your preference there. So,
fine with me.
Yeah, I like the electronic copy.
It might just help to be able to use that zoom button to zoom in and out a little bit rather than you having control. If we had the copies, we could look at it closer.
yeah. So, yeah, because I mean, with this, I'm just leaving the full. So, okay. If no one has questions on this, are you ready for the next waiver?
I think we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next one is New Life Baptist Church. Once again, we are creating utility easements and abolishing interior lot lines. Does anybody have any questions regarding this one?
No.
I believe we're good.
Okay. Next one is the Delbert Powers waiver. You all have seen this one before. It's been on the agenda since January. The back corners have been underwater most of the time. So they were never able to complete the survey to actually get the plat to you all for the meeting. In this case, there is a metal building on the south end of the property. It does encroach onto the railroad property. Once again, we're not dealing with that. That is an issue between the railroad and the property owners. But this came in as a KRS 100 violation. It had never been platted. So that's all we're doing today. We are establishing the plat so a transfer of sale can be completed. Do we have any questions here?
No question.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. This waiver here, this is on Broyles Avenue off of Old Mayfield Road. what we have here is the Jana Medlin has a larger tract of land. They are going to create tract 1, which she is going to sell to the Kaufmans to give them a larger tract of land. So do you have any questions with this one?
No.
No.
Okay. Boy, I like this. Okay, we'll move on to Jackson Purchase. Okay. Once again, a very busy plat. This one here, we are abolishing interior lot lines. There was also an established right-of-way that came from Highway 60 going back to the building. That was never adopted as a county road. It was not built to spec. Jackson Purchase has said that they would like to abolish the right-of-way and let that be their private driveway instead of an actual roadway. Randy can chime in here, but he has said that he has no issue with it, and I know that the judge has no issue with abolishing the right-of-way and allowing that to be their private drive.
That's correct. We've never accepted that into the county road system. In fact, when I first started, Doug and I had gone to that place to see if they would be interested in or see about getting them to have some kind of bond for the road. That had never been done. So really, it's just like a private entrance as it exists right now. So I don't see any problem at all with giving that up.
And when we go to vote on the waivers, Wayne, you, just to be on the record, you are abstaining from voting on this waiver, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You are correct.
Okay, are we ready for the last waiver?
Yeah.
Okay. This here is the Joanne Golden Estate. It's currently 2 tracts of land. It's lot 6, which you see there on Whippoorwill Lane, and then a larger tract of land behind it. They are abolishing the property line on tract 6 and creating 2 new property lines to create what you see as tract B. And there's already a driveway there going back to the house on tract A. They are establishing an easement along that driveway to allow access to tract B also. Does anybody have any questions regarding this plat?
No, I don't.
I think we're good.
Okay, well, that is all of the waivers that we have.
Do we have a motion?
I move that the requested approval be given.
We have a second.
Second.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Hausman,
Aye.
Commissioner Metzger,
Aye.
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Chair Elliott.
Aye.
Okay.
I guess we have the presentation of the High Point Pentecostal Church.
Yes, let me get this where I can pull it up. Okay. Now with this one, High Point Pentecostal Church, they're wanting to add a fellowship hall. They currently have 2 tracts of land. Now, I've got a second site plan I can show you. They've actually provided me with 2. And I want to show you both of them. Let me start with this one. This site plan here shows the actual 2 separate lots. lots. Their proposed building does meet all of the setback requirements. But what they're asking, and they can't bring a waiver in right now, the back of their property is currently in the expanded Ohio River. So they can't get a full survey on it. They're hoping to be able to do it next week. They're wanting to abolish the lot line because if you see on this one, there's a canopy out front of the proposed building. That canopy stretches across the property line. So what we're going to ask for you all to do is because this is a permitted use, we're going to ask that you all approve this site plan, and it will be the building with the canopy is contingent upon them bringing in a waiver plat that gets approved that abolishes that lot line, so we don't build anything over the lot line. But this would allow them to go ahead and get started on their main building, which meets all of the other requirements set forth in the ordinance.
One thing, I'll just tell you that one thing that this particular plan that you're looking at does not comply with is the section of our ordinance dealing with development plans that requires that the full boundary of the property be shown on the plan, which is also one of the requirements for the subdivision plat too, and that was a big part of the reason they could not bring the waiver plat before you this month. But you know, that is a requirement for development plans that it contain that it show the boundary of the property, and you'll see that this does not show the north line of the property.
Well, this is actually a site plan, not a development. Development plans only apply if you have a zone map amendment, a planned unit development, a mobile home park, or if you're putting multiple principal structures on a lot. This is an accessory to the church. The church itself is the principal building, principal purpose of the property.
That's not what it says, and that's not the way it was presented. That's not even the way it's shown on the agenda. So, you know, and that's part of the problem that we have right now is, you know, the terminology is, you know, interchangeably used among different documents. And, you know, this says it's a site development plan. The development plan, then it's supposed to show the boundary.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got Wayne on the phone. Oh, okay. Wayne, I'm going to put you on speakerphone. Wayne has lost internet connection. So actually, Wayne, in the email invite that you got to the meeting, there is a dial-in option on there. Can you dial into that and at least be able to take part that way?
Yeah, I'll give it an effort.
Okay, we'll let you, I'll hang up with you. We'll wait and let you get dialed in, and then we'll go from there.
All right.
Okay, thank you. I thought it looked like my list shrunk over here on the side of my screen, but we'll give Wayne a minute, see if he can't get dialed in. Now, if Wayne doesn't get dialed in, Joe, as vice chair, you ready to step up?
Oh, well, we're about done, so that won't be too bad.
You still have a quorum?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got a quorum.
Yeah, we still have a quorum. I was waiting for Wayne to dial in before I said too much, but in response to what Sonny was saying, I recall when I first came on this board, we had a lot of trouble with people bringing in plats and all sorts of different items that really were not to the specifications of what we needed. And we would send them back. And I know it's unfortunate because it costs people who have sent theirs in, but whether it's coming from whatever office, it's just like any other record that we have to make. It needs to be presented correctly to the board. If it's a site plan, it needs to be a site plan. If it's a development plan, you know, all of the different terminology, I feel like need to be correct. And I can understand doing variances like when you can't find the end of a property because it's flooded at that time, you know, but somehow us being the oversight, we have to have.
Yeah, I think I'm back.
Oh, good. Yeah, I heard you. I heard you.
Okay, so
We have to have
do we have everybody here?
Let's see.
Carol?
I'm here.
Okay. Okay, I'm seeing everybody now.
Okay. I believe there's certain guidelines that we need to adhere to keep things even all the way across. And when we finish something, we know it's finished.
And that's something we've been trying to work on. And like, if you notice on here, it says final site development plan. Okay. It's got both words in there. But under our ordinance, if it's a development plan, it clearly states development plans apply in 4 situations. A zoning map amendment. This is not a zoning map amendment. It applies if there's multiple principal buildings. There's an accessory building, not multiple principal buildings. The third is a mobile home park. This is not a mobile home park. The fourth is a planned unit development. This is not a planned unit development. So it does not meet any of the 4 criteria for a development plan. So while I understand it, it may, by saying site development plan, may be confusing. It's a site plan. And under the site plan, what gets presented is in the ordinance, it says if the zoning administrator deems it sufficient. Well, we've got everything we need, because if, like I said, we're going to ask that you approve it conditional upon them getting the waiver in, where even if the waiver doesn't come in, they can build the building because it does meet the setback requirements. Because, you know, here on what I now have on your screen, that it's the building without the canopy. It shows the property lines, it shows setbacks. So everything that's required to know the proper location and if it meets the setback requirements and that and all the other requirements of the ordinance, they're there. So it meets the requirements set forth in the ordinance. And it's a permitted use.
Okay. And I understand that, and I agree. I mean, when I look at it, I have no problem with it. But if it's a site plan and not a site development plan, then it probably ought to say that. in future.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that's something we're working with. I wish that I could say I can snap my fingers and that issue is resolved. And all of you all have served on this commission long enough. You know that's not the case.
Right.
As much as we wish it was, it's not.
Well, this has obviously been treated as a development plan all along until, you know, just recently when this problem cropped up, and, you know, now it's become a site plan. If it was a site plan, it didn't even need to be on the agenda for today, you know, for this commission to consider. If it's a development plan, then this commission can require a public hearing if you want to.
Well, see, since I've been here, there's see that's the thing. Since I've been here, there's not been a distinction to this point between site plans and development plans. If it is any kind of non-residential development, it has been coming through. That's why so much of the time you see the phrase site development plan, because it falls on the agenda under development plans. But Sonny's right, it's not. And in my office, this has not been handled as a development plan from day one. It has been handled as a site plan all along.
Well, why was it?
Does it matter, Greg, that it's identified in our packet as a development plan?
No, that falls back to that old saying, why do you do it that way? Well, because we always have. Just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean it's right, but that's the crux of it. It's always fallen on the agenda as a development plan. And yeah, site plans really don't have to go before the planning commission, but since I've been in this job, they have. Doug Moore started that, and I know the reasoning why, and it was because of everything that had gone on. And but under our ordinance, it's actually not required. But because to this day we haven't changed that policy internally, that's why it's still on your agenda for your review.
All right.
I guess it's, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the site plan for High Point Pentecostal Church located at 6051 Noble Road, contingent upon a valid waiver of subdivision is submitted so the canopy is not built over a property line. However, construction of the rest of the building may proceed.
Do we have a second to that motion? Well, I assume that motion dies for lack of a second. Do I have a? All right. You second that motion, Carol?
I second that motion.
All right. Mr. Cannon, call roll, please.
Commissioner Hausman?
Nay.
Commissioner Metzger?
Aye.
Commissioner Young?
Aye.
Chair Lay?
Aye. Y'all didn't pay the bills while I was gone, did you?
No.
Well, I guess we have no public hearings, no public comment. We'll move on to, I guess, paying the bills.
I move to pay the bills as distributed for McMurray and Livingston Planning Commission, $3,430.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do call the roll, please.
Commissioner Hausman?
Aye.
Commissioner Metzger? Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Chair Elliott. And before we adjourn, I will throw out that as long as we're holding these Zoom meetings, we may change, but I don't foresee us doing a public hearing. I'm in a group chat with a lot of the other administrators across the state, and I've heard one person say that they've held a public hearing using video conferencing and it did fine. I've heard others say that they've struggled with it. So unless something comes up that we have to hold one, as of now, I am not planning on doing a public hearing. Like I said, subject to change, but that's right now the plan is not to do one. We've seen some of the difficulties, like with Wayne dropping out, having to call in, then coming back. And if you got a public hearing, you've got to open it up to the public to come in. So that means they've got to call in or write in. I've got to either have letters or got to have them where they can come in. That's more people you got control in the room. It makes it a lot harder to hold the meetings. So I don't know that we'll do a public hearing.
Greg, do you know of anything that you have in the pipeline now that would likely require a public hearing?
Well, this gets back to that site plan development plan issue, because everything's been coming through the planning commission. And if a site plan was over 10,000 square feet, it was still having a public comment period in that. I do have one laying on my desk. It's been laying on my desk for a couple of weeks. So it's resolving that issue. We get it resolved that it is clear that is a site plan, it is not a development plan, then it wouldn't require the public comment period. Matter of fact, it wouldn't require planning commission approval. It would require me, Randy, and David getting together, reviewing it and approving it and going from there. And that's probably what's going to happen. It's an expansion of a current business. It's in the proper zone. Everything's in place. There's being a permitted use. It meets the definitions of a site plan, not a development.
Is the impervious area over 10,000 square feet?
It is, but we don't have, when you read the ordinance, that requirement is on development plans, not on site plans.
Well,
and see that's,
I don't know. I think you're changing the title of these things. They've always been development plans whenever they've come before the commission until now. And, when you look at them, that's what they're titled and that's the way they've been presented on the agenda. And, I don't know, it's like, something's being changed without any formal discussion. Maybe this board needs to, at some point, discuss what you all would like to do. Maybe you don't want to be involved in development plans. I don't know whether you really need to be or not. Under the statute, if you look at chapter 100, there's no mention of development plans other than you can require a development plan to make a zone map amendment. That's the only reference to a development plan that I'm aware of. Really, what you're supposed to approve is subdivisions, map amendments, and text amendments.
And waivers.
Well, subdivisions, yeah. Subdivisions under 100. So, those are really the three main things that the Planning Commission is charged with under Chapter 100. So,
well, and once again, this goes back to why do you do it that way? Well, that's the way we've done it since before I hired on. But if you read Section 51, it's not required, and most of what comes through that's labeled as a development plan doesn't meet the development plan definition. It meets the requirements set forth for a site plan. So, you know, that's one of the things we're working through. So, but
Well, nobody else has any other comments. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Call roll, please.
Commissioner Hausman,
Aye.
Commissioner Metzger,
Aye.
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
and Chair Elliott.
Yeah, this is my 5th Zoom meeting in the last week. The first time I've had problems with the internet, but
So, this is my 3rd, and so far things have gone pretty smoothly. So, okay, well, I appreciate everybody taking the time to show up. I am going to end the meeting now, and everybody's stay safe, and I will talk to you all soon. I will email you about the next meeting.
Okay.
all right, be safe.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Aye.